As the end of a course approaches, it's natural for teachers to be concerned about those empty spots in their gradebooks. So today we're going to talk about some strategies for dealing with missing work. Before you implement the strategies, there's really two questions you need to consider. First of all, do you need all the work that's missing from a student, or do you need evidence that demonstrates the expectations that students have not yet had the opportunity to meet in your class? The two aren't always the same thing. So think about, is this about compliance? I want students to hand in every assessment, or is this about achievement? I need proof that the students have met all of the overall expectations in my class. The second consideration is, what do students need to know or be able to do to earn a 50% in your class? Think about your overall expectations. Have a look at the achievement chart in your curriculum document and read over what a limited demonstration or that level 1 demonstration actually looks like. And then think about, how does that translate into the skills and knowledge in my class? Be reasonable about what a 50% really is in your class. Once you've considered those two questions, then there are a few ways you can both be proactive and reactive to make sure that you have sufficient evidence in your gradebook to identify a level of achievement for your students. The information that I'm going to share in the remainder of this video was largely sourced from an SDLP staff meeting, where one teacher posed the question, what do I do about missing assignments? And many teachers were willing to share what they've tried and what succeeded in their own classes. So all of these ideas are tried and tested by teachers in the SDLP and hybrid models. So the first thing you can do is support student organization. We know that the virtual learning environment can be really overwhelming for many students, and they can lose track of where they're supposed to look for certain information and where they'll find all of the things they need to complete on their learning management system. So you can support student organization by providing them with an easy way to keep track of what they need to do. This can be different depending on your comfort level. Maybe even talk with your students about what might work best for them. But you could have checklists or hyperdocs, a weekly schedule or goal setting, or a daily agenda. The key components to make this work is, number one, consistency. Don't use a checklist one week and a daily agenda the next. Keep it consistent so students always know where to look for that information. Make it a one-stop shop that's easy to find. So don't have some things posted in a Google Classroom classwork stream, and then have other things posted in your VLE, and then have something else going out in an email. Make sure students always know where to look for the necessary information. Include live links to the assignments in that tracking method you use. So if it's a checklist that lists what needs to be completed, make sure that checklist includes live links so students can only just click out from that one source to get everything they need to complete, rather than make them have to search all over Google Classroom or the VLE to find out what they need to do. And finally, and I know we hesitate to do this, but clarify the priority items by color coding or ranking them in order. But identify for students what is most important for you to complete, and what are the things that, if you really don't have time, you can set aside. If students think that they have 20 things that have to be completed in the last 3 days of class, they're going to feel like there's no chance they'll be successful. But if you can say, these are the top 3 things I really need from you, and we won't worry about the rest, then it becomes much more manageable for them. So always clarify, what are the must-have items and what are the things that would just be nice to have if the student has time. Secondly, communication. It's really important to establish communication routines early in the course before there's a problem. You need to find something that works for all parties. So just to say to your students, hey, make sure you check your email, doesn't mean they're going to check their email and doesn't mean they'll see the messages you're sending to them. We know that most students and many parents don't live in the email world anymore. They use different forms of communication, and therefore they don't even think about checking their email on a regular basis. So talk with your students, ask them what's going to work best for them, and share what's going to work best for you, and figure out a solution for how you'll communicate with each other when necessary. That could include Google Hangouts, phone calls, texting, only if you're comfortable with that, of course, or regularly scheduled Google Meets, whole class, small group, or one-to-one. If the last week of class, when there's lots of work missing, is the first time you're attempting to communicate with a student one-to-one, it'll be no surprise that you're struggling to reach them. But if you set up a routine for communication early in the course and have some way of regularly checking in with your students, then it will be easier to get their attention and get some completed work from them toward the end of the course. Third is helping students get unstuck. It's important that we consider that sometimes work is missing, not because the student doesn't want to complete it, but because they're unsure in how to begin or how to proceed. It's also important to remember that not all students will make the first move, no matter how much help is needed. I know in my own house, I have a son, and despite the fact that his teachers have Google Meets open all day for students who need extra help, he is so shy and introverted that he will never join one of those Google Meets, because to do that is just too vulnerable a situation for him. So, what are some ways you can initiate support from a distance? How do you know students need help? And then how do you offer that help if you know they're not going to make the first move? It's a really great idea to leverage those Google tools we have access to: Google Docs, Google Slides, Jamboards, etc. Have your students work in those shared tools so that you can observe their progress. You can check in and see, okay, this student has been working on this for 2 days and there's nothing recorded. Obviously, something is getting them stuck, whether it's time management or whether it's they don't know what to do. Or if they seem to be chugging along just fine and then all of a sudden everything stops, something else might have gotten them stuck. So when you're using these shared Google tools, you can offer support using the comments feature. You could just type in, hey, I see you haven't gotten started yet. Is there something I can help you with? Reach out to the student that way. Or, and this was a great suggestion from one of the SDLP teachers, arrange a live Google Meet or a phone call to talk through the task with the student. And as they're talking about their ideas, you as the teacher start scribing their thoughts into that shared Google Doc as they speak. When the student sees that their doc is being populated with information, that can be enough to give them the little push they need to finish the rest on their own. So keep in mind, your students might just be stuck. They're not intentionally ignoring the work. Finally, if time is running out in the course and you've still a lot of gaps in terms of your evidence of learning, you can conference or have an exit interview with your students to gather missing data. First thing you need to do is arrange a way to communicate one-on-one. That could be in a Google Meet, through a phone call, or another method. Make sure the student knows when and where this is happening. Don't just send an email and say, you need to log into this Google Meet on this day at this time. Confirm that they've actually gotten that message and make sure the time is going to work for them. Then have a look in your gradebook and identify the expectations that you still need data for. Perhaps if you're missing an assignment that demonstrated 3 expectations, you've been able to see some of those expectations in an alternate assessment piece, or you've observed them, or a conversation has given you some data on them. So just identify those expectations that you lack any data for. Then develop a series of questions that address the overall expectations. You can have 1 or 2 questions per expectation, or you could have 1 question that covers multiple expectations. Do whatever is going to work in your subject area. Just don't make it overwhelming. This isn't an oral exam. Share only those questions that address the missing data with the student. If they have demonstrated expectations 1 to 4 and it's just 5 they're missing, then you only need to share a question or 2 that address overall expectation number 5. Share those questions with the students in advance of the conference so they have an opportunity to think about a response. Then, when the conference or interview takes place, be ready to check off expectations as the student responds. And if there's things that are still missing, prompt the student for more detail as it's needed to give them a full opportunity to earn the credit. Remember, when we're at the point of conferencing or an exit interview to gather missing data when there's lots of gaps in your gradebook, this isn't about whether the student is getting an 85 or 90. This is about whether the student has demonstrated enough understanding in order to earn the credit. We're talking about a level 1. And remember, student success teachers are available to intervene when missing work puts a student's credit at risk. Now, that doesn't mean we talk to them every time an assessment is missing or late, but if they get to the point where there's so many gaps in your gradebook that whether or not the student will earn the credit is at risk, then please reach out to student success teachers so they can help get that missing work from the student. Make sure you've considered those first 2 questions in this video before you have a conversation with the student success teacher. You need to be able to tell them which assessment pieces do you really need and have a clear understanding of what a 50% in your course actually looks like. So hybrid teachers should use the school's established processes to connect with student success teachers, and SDLP teachers will click on that credit alert in their weekly PRISM reports to identify that a student is in a position where their credit is at risk because there are so many assessment pieces missing. And remember, if ever in doubt about what is a 50% in my class, how do I organize my gradebook so the overall expectations are more clear? I don't know what to do about this one student's particular situation. Remember, there's people around to talk it out with. Talk with a department head, an administrator, and of course, Jill and I are always available to engage in conversations about assessment practices. So reach out if you need someone to talk to.